Well, it's traditional in New Zealand to start in the language of the first people that arrived here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I thought I would do that and follow with an acknowledgement of country. Tihei Māori ora, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā matawaka o te motu. Nau mai, piki mai, haere mai. Haere mai I rangi te kaupapa whakahirahira o tēnei wā, o te wānanga o Zenergy. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou tātou. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which this webinar is being co-hosted and the many lands on which we are all meeting today. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and I'm joining from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and wish to pay my respects to iwi as tangata whenua and Treaty of Waitangi partners. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Facilitation Optimiser. Today, or this morning, or this evening, wherever you're joining us from, you're welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Stephen Thorpe, and with my Zenergy colleague Simone Mouth, we'll be leading you through this session today. Our purpose is to introduce the Zenergy approach, and we have some Zenergy facilitation concepts to introduce to you and to explore. And along with that, we have a whole wonderful group here that has a whole lot of wisdom. So all of that will be into the pot as we work through today. So a lot of experience to draw from, and we hope to tap into our collective wisdom. In terms of our culture or our ways of working, how we work together today, I suggest that we value difference, to participate, and to be curious, because some of these things may be familiar, some might be a little bit different, and we encourage you to be curious about exploring those with us today. Now, before I say a little bit more about me, I'll invite my co-host and colleague, Simone, to introduce herself. Over to you,
Thanks,
Simone.
Stephen. Thank you. I'm calling in today from my ancestral land here in Saxony, Germany. I'm with my family here in Dresden, and I left Germany about 26 years ago to live in all sorts of parts of the world, and I'm currently settled and living in Melbourne, Australia for most of my life. Facilitation came to me very early on in my life. During university, I studied adult learning, and as part of that, I learned a lot about small group engagement and really interactive participatory learning and facilitation. And I became really passionate about it because at the same time, I experienced quite a strong historical moment in Germany where the east and the west of Germany were unified into one country again after 40 years of separation. And that, of course, came with a lot of challenges to bringing people together and finding, making collective decision makings, etc. And I noticed it wasn't done in the way I would have liked. And when I really learned about facilitation, I was like, oh my God, we need these skills to make bringing people better together. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I found Zenergy about 15 years ago when I was living in New Zealand. I've worked with Dale and with Stephen really closely whilst I was living there for 5 years. And then life drew me to Australia about 10 years ago, and I brought Zenergy with me to Australia and have been doing it there ever since. I'm also have my own company called Collective Insight, helping leaders to apply these skills in their team development and in their, making collaboration work in organizations. And I'm also now applying it to healthy relating at home and at work, because with these tools that you're going to learn a little bit today and in our work are applying really how we relate in groups and with each other. And they're really, really powerful. And I just want to also say, of course, this is a starting point of a conversation today, but if you do have to go earlier or you like to reconnect and continue talking to us, I'm just going to put a link to both Stephen and me to book a time with us to connect if you do want to continue the conversation and have any questions. That's me, Stephen. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Simone. A little bit about me. I'm a director of Zenergy, and I am also a senior lecturer at the Auckland University of Technology, where I teach on a team facilitation for IT projects class in the Master of IT Project Management. And I tend to work with people that have been in the technology space, and it's really a space where people need to work well together because you've got complex projects they're working on, lots of different and novel and new technologies. There's lots of complexity, lots of uncertainty, and working together in that space is really important. So I do a bit of that, and I supervise students doing all sorts of interesting projects, looking at team culture and some of the more recent dynamics around how people are teaming with AI to do things and how AI is affecting group work. So, a little bit about me. Today, after a little bit on Xenergy and Dale Hunter, who was one of our founders and wrote 5 books on facilitation and group work, we'll introduce you to the Xenergy facilitation model that we use, and then our approach to whole person learning, which is a key aspect of how we interact and relate with others we work with. Then we're going to introduce you to the True North and what that means in terms of making interventions with one other person that you might be facilitating. And then we're going to cover our intervention model, which is looking at working with a group and why to intervene and how we do that. Then we might have some reflections and gathering some of the wisdom from everyone in the room after that. So that's our plan for our session today. Now, my facilitation foundation journey starts some 25 years ago when I had this wonderful lady, Dale Hunter, come into my research laboratory at the university. And instead of talking about what we were going to talk about with our interactive whiteboards, we had a conversation about the consciousness of trees. And we really connected, Dale and I. And I came to Xenergy shortly after that for a 6-month workplace secondment. And yeah, 24 and a half years later, I'm still there. And yeah, it's great to learn some of the things that we're going to introduce you to today. Dale started Xenergy back in 1993 with 3 other colleagues and started training people in facilitation and group work. And she's since then written the 5 books I mentioned. The Art of Facilitation is probably the one that's most popular and most relevant. It sort of details our approach to facilitation. And from that came the Xenergy Diploma Facilitation, drawing on the work that Dale had done, but also from others like John Heron and Carl Rogers and Peter Singh, and bringing that work together. Dale also completed her PhD in sustainable cooperative processes and organizations, sort of looking at how do you bring what we do in small groups to organizations and structures there. And so much of this energy work's grounded in that as well. And some of her early learnings doing community development in South Auckland. So Xenergy, maybe in one sentence, is a cooperative group facilitators, all committed to whole people cooperating in a sustainable world. That's a little taste of what Xenergy is and us. And now I'll hand you over to Simone. Are we going to talk about the frameworks and tools first?
No, I think we're going straight into those, right?
Straight into it.
So
Yep.
the first one is the facilitation model, which you're going to do, Stephen.
Yep. Yeah, so we thought from some of the feedback and the common challenges that you mentioned as people registered, getting role clarity and agreement to be the facilitator is one of the things that came up. Whose agenda is it anyway? Really challenging if you as the facilitator have your own agenda that's different from the group. And also those elements of time pressure that seem to fit all of the different areas of the model that we're going to talk about today. That challenge we often call between task and process. So having enough of the process to get a really good outcome, but also being conscious and deliberative with time. So our next slide has our Xenergy model, and I brought my rubber band along with me. If you have a rubber band handy, I'd really encourage you to have a look at feeling what it physically feels like holding a rubber band in there. And so if you imagine our model as a pyramid, and at the bottom left-hand corner, we've got facilitating another. At the thumb, we've got facilitating the self. And at the top of the pyramid, we've got that facilitating the group. And these are sort of the 3 different edges that a facilitator will work on, working with ourselves, first of all, And often our own experience when we're working with the group gives us insights into what might be happening. So what we're thinking and feeling is really as valid as what's going on in the group. You might be working with one individual, facilitating one other, somebody that might be dominant in the group, for example, and trying to balance the interaction between them. Also, maybe working for the people that are often a bit more quiet or maybe need a little bit more time to process things and then to speak. So balancing that interaction out so that you don't have one particular member dominating and you're getting all of the collective wisdom that's present in the group out. At the edge of the pyramid is our purpose. So right at the top, we've got our purpose of what the group is trying to achieve. And that purpose needs to be set by the group itself. If we come in with our own purpose and gift it, in a sense, to a team, they will have such a stronger outcome if they're able to create their own purpose in their own words. And so getting the group to decide what it is that they're collectively there to do, it's a very simple concept and it makes so much sense once you have it in place. But often a lot of teams, a lot of groups haven't got an explicit purpose for why they're there and what they're trying to achieve together. And when that happens, everybody in the group's got a different idea of what the purpose is, and you don't get strong alignment, and people go off and do different things. So that part of the model is really helpful to have as a facilitator. The other part in the middle of this pyramid model is what we call the culture, and that's detailing how the group will work together. And often, if you've got a strong culture and a way of working as a group, and participants are living and breathing that culture as they work with one another, then that will be something that will hold the tension of the purpose and the external environment and things that go on that put pressure onto the team. And often you've got a clear purpose of what you're trying to achieve and a culture for how you're going to work together in the middle. That's something that we look for as facilitators, as the levers we often look to. What is the group's purpose? If they don't have a clear purpose, then our first thing might be working with the group to define what that is. And then if they've got their purpose, what is the culture they need to achieve that? And once you've set those first two elements, they're really helpful levers as a facilitator because we say that the facilitator stands in the purpose and guards the culture. And whenever the group's interacting, as a facilitator, you might be going, now, how is this helping us get to our purpose? And if it's not getting to the purpose, then that's a decision you might make to intervene. And sometimes groups do go off on a tangent, and it turns out that it's really valuable for the group. So not like you need to interrupt that, but making those choices as the facilitator can be done from standing and helping the group achieve its purpose. The culture, on the other hand, is the ways that the group have agreed to work together. And often they may choose certain aspirational qualities that they're going to take on, and then you see that they're not actually doing that in the interactions they have. So often you can look to the culture there and say, well, the group's agreed to work in this particular way, but I don't see it as the facilitator showing up. And you might be challenging the group on that. Or there might be one particular person that might be dominating the group, and yet the culture might have something in there, an equal voice for all. And so you're using that culture to help you with the interventions that you might make. Facilitating self, I mentioned, is very important because often when we're in the facilitator role, there's a lot of dynamics that go on with us internally as much as what the group is expecting of us as the facilitator. So often that's a really useful concept to see that who we are and how we are being is as important as the particular technique or the process or the activity we might introduce. And that facilitating self really is focusing on deep listening to what's going on and being present as much as possible to find out, what's the question that's going to help this group move forward, and what's the element that's going to be needed next as you see the group grappling with achieving its purpose. Facilitating another might be those interventions that you might make with one individual. And then there's facilitating the group as a whole. Where is the group going on its journey and how's it going getting there? So as a facilitator, people may see you do very little. You might ask a few questions. You might propose a process. You and I give a few instructions. And we often look at it like a swan on the water, or maybe a duck on a lake. And on the surface, it looks like the swan or the duck's gliding along. But underneath, the feet are paddling away and driving the facilitator forward, providing that direction. And so, as the facilitator, would be working on these levels at the same time, facilitating oneself, facilitating one another, and facilitating the group as a whole, and looking to purpose and culture for those interventions. That's a brief introduction to our model. Anything you want to add to that, Simone, that I've missed? Or
Did you talk about the external environment and the social legal contracts?
uh,
I'm happy to say a bit about that.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So of course, you have to deal with external environments. It can either be too hot or too noisy or too small or too big. So like how to create a space that, fits for your group and how to work with that. So you have to be aware of the external environment. But also, is the group part of a bigger organization, right? And how does what the group is doing link to what the bigger organization is doing? Yeah, so I always look, okay, the group purpose might be team development or conflict resolution or whatever it is, but or even culture development. But then what's the bigger organization culture and values and purpose? So I always look at that, because there's the meta container and there's the smaller container that serves the bigger picture. And you, of course, also need to be aware of social and legal contracts, depending on your circumstances of facilitation. What are your social and legal contracts? Who is your client? Who are you serving? Are you serving the manager that got you into the team, or are you serving the team? What's the relationships there? So that will help you. Cool. And we have a little bit of time, maybe 5 minutes, to go back to the challenges to see how that might relate to you, or if you have any questions. We've got about 5 minutes to chat about questions to this model as well, if you want to bring them up. Yeah, the role clarity and agreement, the model really helps you to share, okay, I'm the facilitator here, and what is my role as the facilitator, to make that really clear when you talk about your culture, right? What's the role of the manager in the room? I would talk that to the manager always at the beginning, like, okay, what is your role in the room? And do you want to empower the group to be free? Then maybe it's worth not being in the room. So being really, really clear about that. And the mandate to intervene for the facilitator is given by the purpose and the culture. I always say the purpose and the culture are the boss, not you as the facilitator. Yeah, it's the purpose and the culture. And that gives you the security, because you're not then you against them when it comes to challenge the situation. It's, hey, you agreed this purpose. This is what I'm standing in for you. If this is not anymore working for you, do you want to change it, right? You are in service to the group. And that gives you the mandate to be there. Whose agenda is it anyway? Again, this sort of conversation comes out in the culture and purpose discussion, and when you prepare beforehand. Are you actually trying to deliver an agenda for a manager that got you in? Or are you delivering an agenda that is really needed by the group? So having some agreements there. And yeah, being really aware that they're termed the term called facilitation, which is using facilitation to manipulate the group towards an outcome. So finding, facilitation is really in service to what the group wants to achieve and what they need. And that comes into also the ethics of facilitation, which is a whole nother big subject to look at. And we often are in these dilemmas. So like, hey, who are we serving here, and what are we trying to get as a facilitator, right? Any questions or anything else? Yep. Anyone has any questions that they came with? Yep,
I
Chloe.
guess I have an observation. It started with a question, but maybe it answered itself. I often find that I look for a person in the group, um, that's going to be, am I hitting this right? And recently I had a hui, and I just could not read this person, and I'm wondering if she wasn't actually representing the group at all, and I shouldn't have put that on her. and maybe that was that facilitating another element. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. Like, I think I know as a facilitator, particularly when I was growing into it, it's sometimes easy just to follow one person intervene. You know, when one person says, "Oh, I'm ready to go, move on," blah, 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 it's like, "Oh, just go with that one person." Um, but it's a bit being a bit aware. I think that's what this facilitating the group talks about. That you always also standing in the bigger group, right? The group has its own identity. So even if one person says they're ready to go on, you always need to check, are other people also ready to go on? And reading the room, always reading the room on all people, not just on one person, to have the sense of where the group is at as a whole, moving towards the purpose. Does that make sense? Or Stephen, you want to say as
Yeah,
well something?
you can often just ask the question, I hear there's a call to move on. Is everyone in agreement with that, or is there more to go? And then you've given the group the choice whether there is something that still needs to come out. And sometimes you can say, oh, I think there might be something that needs to be said. And often, if you give it enough space, it will come up and someone say, oh, yeah, actually, I did want to say something. And then that's usually something very juicy at the time. So it's that challenge sometimes where some participants want to move on to the next thing and others are just a little bit in the process. And they can often be holding on to some real gems. And as the facilitator, if we don't create a question for the group to tell you, yes, it's time to move on, sometimes you'll know, you pick it up from the energy of the people in the group. Yep, they're ready to go. And you don't need to
Yeah.
ask. But
Yeah, it was. I think it was a lack of feedback from the person. Like it just didn't have a transparent face, and they weren't. Oh, you turned the light off on me. Yeah, they
there's an
weren't
intervention.
contributing. But I think oh, you want to show us a star? Cool, thank you.
Ah,
Yeah, I think they were feeling like they were in an observation role in the team and actually didn't feel like they had. They were, yeah. So it was like, yeah, her silence didn't need to be read into as this person isn't contributing and wants to. It was more they actually were just in that role. So yeah,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's good to ask always, right? It's like rather than guessing and assuming, it's always great to ask. Hey, I noticed you haven't spoken for a while. Would you like to add anything, you know? Yeah, definitely. It's totally okay to be direct and inclusive. Yeah. Okay, I will move on to
Great.
the
Thanks,
next
Mel.
slide. Facilitating self. So let's dive into those three things on the bottom of the pyramid. So facilitating self. Some of the common challenges that some of you have put in for the people who registered is dealing with the confidence to intervene. Yeah, like when do you intervene and then feeling kind of frozen, not being able to. That often has to do with confidence, not wanting to interrupt, you know, when you hear tangents. Um, the other challenge was like reading the room and physically or energetically pulling focus back to the front of the room. So people getting really engaged sometimes. If you're doing a really good job, you become really invisible and the group gets completely engaged, which is really wonderful. So how do you bring back attention to yourself, you know, when you move on and move on? And of course, how to work with time pressure. So the model I like to share is our whole person learning model. That's really one of the foundational models we work with. And it's also linked to the integrated learning model by John Herron. And it refers to some of the research that's been showing that we have brain cells in different parts of our body that we're actually not using often, but they're very powerful for us as facilitators to read the room, right? Because we can manage an agenda anytime from our head, but when things go off track, we need to use our body to read the room and read the energy. So we have, of course, a brain in our head. We also have brain cells in our heart. And there is an organization called heartmaths.org that has done a lot of research around the signals the heart receives. And there is research that the heart actually receives more signals from the outside world than the brain. And thus the heart actually gives more signals and information to the brain than vice versa. So there's a lot going on that we can use and perceive when we are opening out our heart space. And then there's also brain cells in our belly area. And we might hear that referred to in the sort of usual tongue around our gut instinct, right? What does our gut tells us? Or I had an intuition or a sense of something. That's what our gut brain is. Not to confuse with just instinct, an instinctual, which is sort of linked to our animal brain, where we instinctively responding for survival. That's one thing. But when we actually really know something and have integrated something, we have an intuition. There's an intuitive hit that sometimes comes, which is a different level of wisdom that we can access. And then, of course, we have our hand and feet that need to be grounded to be really fully present. Otherwise, you will not receive those clues from your heart and in your head. So grounding is one of the number one self-facilitating tips. If you are feeling, I'm lost, I don't know when to intervene, the group is going off, take a deep breath, connect to your feet on the ground, and just become really grounded and present, and then tune into your body and feel like, what can I do? So let's have a bit of an exploration. If you do have some piece of paper there in front of you, I would like you to create 5 little post-its, even just little post-its. See if you can get that for me. And we're gonna do a little meditation on the whole person because I want you to have a feel what that actually feels like. So we got an image with a little head on it, and then you have a him image with a little heart on it, a little post-it, and you do an image with a little swirly belly, and then an image with some feet, and an image with some hands. Yeah, oops, 2. And you see them on the slide as well, those post-its. Now, when we do that in the classroom, we also recently had some Aboriginal people putting a couple more stickers on, which is spirit, which is above our head, and we have country underneath us, which was really powerful as well. So if you got those 5 stickers, you can also put it on one sticker and just have a whole person on one A4 sheet if you don't have the post-it notes. And I like you to put them onto the ground. And you're welcome to turn cameras off and just be in listening mode for a moment. And just put them on the ground in the order of course, the whole person, right? Head on the top, then heart, then belly, then feet, and your hands on the side. Just put them on the ground so you have enough space to walk on it. And you can keep cameras on or turn them off. Just be in listening distance. And I'd like you to give you another minute, Arella. There we go. For a moment, I like you when you put it on the ground. I just like you to stand in your body and just close your eyes for a moment. And just connect with your person, with your whole person inside of you. I'd like you to take a couple of deep breaths in your own time. And then take your attention to your feet and notice what your feet feel like on the ground. And imagine you are like a tree and you have roots going from the bottom of your feet into the earth. And you're connecting with the earth. Just have a deep breath into that energy. Breathe it in from the earth. And then breathe out and let go anything you don't need. have a feeling like, what does your feet feel like on the ground, and what do your feet maybe want to tell you? Is there any messages you can hear from your feet? Just breathe those in and notice them. And then take your attention and move up in your body, up to your belly. If you like to put your hands on your belly, just to feel it. Take a deep breath into your belly. And feel what your belly feels like this today, right now. And what does your belly want to tell you? Is there any messages your belly wants to give you? And then wander up to your heart. Take a deep breath into your heart. You can put your hand on it if you like. So feel your heart. Say hello, heart. Thank you for pumping and keeping me alive. What does your heart feel like? And what is the message your heart likes to give you, if there is any? No worries if there's none. And then wander up to your head. Just give it a bit of a wiggle on your top of your shoulders. Maybe even want to lift up your shoulders for a moment. Like what does your head feel like on top of your shoulders today? Take a deep breath into your head and just have a sense of what's going on in your head and what's your head wanting to tell you. And then take your attention wandering down your arms. Give your hands a bit of a shake and feel your hands on your body. Like what do your hands feel like today, and what do they tell you? And then take a whole full breath in again and just sense your body again. What does your body feel now like compared to the beginning of this exercise? Probably many of you will feel a more sense of wholeness. There's a whole body that you are perceiving now. Where beforehand you might didn't perceive your whole body as much. It didn't take long, 5-minute meditation or even less than that. So when you're ready, I'd like you to open your eyes and then look at your whole person in front of you. And I'd like you to walk along on your whole person and stop where you feel you're spending most of your time in. Like, is it the head, the heart, the belly, the hands, the feet? Just have a bit of a walk and have a feeling, where are you spending most of your time? Some of you might wander up and down, might not be always, might be in different places. It's really for you an exercise to perceive, like, where am I spending most of the time? And then I like you to move to the place where you go when you are in a bit of a stressful situation. Like, say in a group, you don't know what to do, you freeze, right? Like there's lack of confidence and you just see something is going off track. Where do you go in your body? Like, just walk again the model and feel into, where do you go? The body has a memory of that. Probably will get a kind of a slight sense of where you are Don't think about it too much. Just follow your body. And then the last question is, where would you like to spend more time? And when you're ready, then come back to the room, to the seat, to your space. So this was a small awareness exercise for you to become aware of your whole person, right? It's facilitating self. And you might have not noticed much in each part of the body, or maybe you have, and I think it is a practice. We're just so often just heads on sticks, like walking around, really using our head a lot. And particularly in work situations, or you might be a very intuitive person and you spend most of the time intuitive. That's what I noticed. I'm spending a lot of time in the intuitive space. And you might want to move more into hands, actions, or more grounded, or more heart and more head. So it's really for you to become aware of yourself, because the more aware you are, the more you can guide yourself, facilitate yourself when you pick something up in the group, because the group mirrors you. Yeah, when you see the group being very much in their head, how can you move more into your belly, or into your grounded, or into your heart? And you can see there's like a figure 8 on this model, and it really refers to us constantly moving our awareness, right? So we might get an intuitive hit, shit, the group goes off track. You feel that instantly, and then you have to kind of move it and feel into, okay, so how am I going to intervene? So you might use your heart to sense, okay, where's the group at? Like, what's the emotions that are present in the room? Is it the right time to move on? And then you might use your head to reshuffle the agenda. You can use all of those things in order to then find the right clue out in a group when to intervene and how to intervene. Yeah, and then you just try something. And I know from Dale, that's one thing I'm still practicing. Like she said to me, like, just flap your lips, because intuitively my body picked up I need to do something, but my head doesn't quite know what to do yet. Yeah, intuitively you feel something, but you don't have the words for it yet because it hasn't come up to the head. So flapping my lips means I'm just making a noise. Hang on, something is happening. And that gets me into panic because all of a sudden everyone is looking at me. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to say something. And then my words come. And if I don't know, I can also say, hey, I'm sensing we're going a bit off track here. And I'm also aware of time. What is it you guys want to do? It's just naming it, right? Just naming and trusting your intuition. That's sort of the boldness and the confidence you can learn and practice when you come to our trainings, or you do it yourself. Yeah. I also like to share that you might also use this model for understanding different learning styles. And I know this is really small here, but the head really talks about your conceptual and logical, thinkers, the people who are much more deep thinkers. There also sometimes you have silent people in the room because they're just thinking longer. They're just thinking about your things that you're saying, and it takes them a while to respond. So you need to give them a bit of space to come in, the deep thinkers. And the cues you might pick up in the group is, I don't understand. Why is this needed? What if this and this happens? So people are really trying to figure things out in their head. You're hearing that, and you can shift them to the heart by saying something. Okay, how do you feel about that, or what's the sense? And then, in terms of the heart, of course, that's an emotional tune space, and you hear things like, oh, it doesn't feel right for me, or I don't like doing this, or I feel really what I feel you really want me to do well. People talking about feelings, and you can notice they're in their heart space. And there are the belly people, very intuitive. They want to get into action fast often. They're sensing something and they know they're coming from a knowing and they're speaking from a space of knowing. They might say things like that feels uncomfortable. I've got a sense that this will work or not work. You hear them using language like I'm sensing, I'm guessing, I'm intuiting this and that. And then the hands people, they just want to get into action. They really want to have a kinesthetic experience. Like, let's just do it. And so you can, by understanding the different the different modalities a group might go through, and understanding where your preference is, you will be able to intervene and facilitate in a much more informed way. Anything, Stephen, you want to say before we finish that part?
Yeah, I think this is a really useful tool for when a group is stuck in its head, and often it can be really obvious, and sometimes they'll even tell you they're stuck in their head, and then to shift it into, like you say, well, how do you feel about this, or how do you feel about the decision, if it was put in this way or that way, what does your intuition tell you about where this is going to go, and often that will elicit a different kind of conversation from participants. That can be quite a useful model to use to shift people. And also, these are all different levels that you can listen from when you're facilitating the group. It's really helpful. It's that,
Yeah, thank you.
so multiple ways of being aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and when you come to our courses and you practice facilitating, we're coaching you to use your whole body, right? This is even like how you're standing and how you're sitting. Are you open to receive things? Are you confident to stand open, to receive clues with your body? Yeah, so that will help you with reading the room and reading the energy in the room. If you're comfortable with your whole person, you can be comfortable with the other whole person in the room. Um, and you can notice when someone is more quiet and how to bring them in. And also when you're really confident in people and you are silent in the front of the room, people will notice that, and they might actually put their attention onto you. But you also can find ways of, having other bells to stop the group work, say, okay, let's come back. Or you have like a hands up, when I put a hand up, please stop all talking, then the group can help you with that. There's so many facilitation tips you can get on how to stop a group when they are really actively and coming back. And welcome, Ed. I just saw you come in as well. We're gonna go now to facilitating another. So from facilitating self to facilitating another.
Yeah, so in this area, we looked at some of the challenges that people talked about managing dominant voices and your need to intervene. We have a model next to share about that, but these are the challenges. We have got a few individuals pushing their own agenda, wanting to control the conversation. In my academic environment that I work in, I have a lot of very highly expertise people who like to be right all the time. And often in their meetings, they're trying to be more right than the other people in the room. They're very much stuck in their head often, their frameworks and their models, and they're very articulate about their arguments. So sometimes you have that kind of dominant quality to the conversation in an academic environment. Yeah, getting pulled into their theory, the research, and losing track of what the group's trying to actually achieve. Fear of being perceived as bossy. So how do you make interventions that don't cut across groups and shut them down? Concern that redirecting the group will make people feel controlled or maybe less confident to participate. And you want to intervene in a way that's specific and clear, and you don't want the downside of that being perceived the wrong way. Reading the room and getting the attention is often something the facilitator needs to do when they're working with the whole group, but also looking at intervening with individuals. And as Simone said, there's lots of different ways you can grab attention, but then how do you intervene from that once you've got that? And yeah, time's always a challenge in groups. So being conscious of time, and sometimes the group's running out of the time it's got, and you want to draw their attention to that. So our next model that we're going to introduce is what we call our true north model. And it's used both for giving feedback to people in our courses about giving constructive feedback and positive feedback of the learning and the training that we do, but also as a useful tool for when intervening. And often on one side of this, you can see we have a dial of a compass. And it's like the idea that when we intervene, we're trying to hit our true north and to get the compass direct on the right spot, right on target, as we like to say. And on one side, we have what we call the pussyfooting. And these are the kind of soft interventions that aren't very powerful, and they're often trying to be too nice to the participants. And if you do that with a dominant personality in the group, it's probably not going to work. Or they're gonna keep going and keep interrupting as they go. On the other side, you can clobber them and be too aggressive with your intervention. And so what we're trying to find is that spot that's the sweet spot in between the pussyfoot that's too soft and the clobber that's too harsh. And you're wanting to find that sweet spot in there. So this is a really useful model, the pussyfoot clobber one, for practicing in our courses how to intervene and how to make those interventions hit the target rather than being too soft or too strong for people. So what we encourage you to do is to be very specific with the wordings of your intervention, to have that constructive in terms of the purpose. So any intervention that you might make, whether it's an observation or a question, or you might be sharing what you observe, all of that's going to be in alignment with the group purpose. We often encourage people to avoid any qualifying words, words like saying quite or almost or nearly, or on our stage 2, we talked about the word just. And one of the participants said that women use the word just 80% more than men. And so they're just asking for your attention rather than asking for attention. So there's some qualifying words we encourage you to avoid. Making direct eye contact is helpful. Speaking to the person directly, not about them. Yeah, giving them the intervention, particularly if they're talking and dominating the ear time. You can be direct with that's great. We value your contribution, but now I'd like to hear from some of the others that haven't had a chance to speak. And you can acknowledge that they're bringing contributions and they've got lots to share, but also that you need to be careful of all of the others in the group as well. And so you're coaching them along the way that their point is important and they're valid to bring it to the group, but there's also others that have just as valid points. To be honest is really important, and to personalize it with I statements. So often I'll say, well, I wonder if everybody feels the same about this. Or I might ask, yeah, what I'm hearing is, what I think I'm hearing is, or what I notice is, or might be looking at the model we've just looked at. What I'm feeling right now is something different, and then offering that as an I statement from the facilitator. Really important that you don't avoid saying what needs to be said as the facilitator. If you know there's something that needs to be intervened, it doesn't get better with time. So it's often an encouragement using this approach. So aim for that target and don't delay. Yeah, anything else I need to share on this one, Simone?
I just saw Chloe coming off. Do you have a question? Maybe I
just
think
want to
about, yeah.
celebrate. I just want to celebrate Chandra because giving feedback to 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, like absolutely nailing this one, mate. When you do work with young people who just want to go on these big tangents, you like see if anyone else has got some opinions on them. I don't know, but yeah, early childhood teachers got this.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chloe. And that's actually a really good point that I think they also said, like treating a group like a 3-year-old. Because, you have to be so clear in the way you intervene, very clear with instructions to get people going, because they just have their attention everywhere, so cutting through their conversation or their thinking processes to be as clear as possible and on target with what you want people to do, the more successful are your intervention as facilitators. So practice with 3-year-olds is a good idea, I think. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we all have probably our own preferences. There will be cultural differences. I know that I have more of a direct klopper coming from the sort of German background. And when I was moving to English speaking languages, I became a real pussyfooter. Even now in Australia, I feel like I'm really pussyfooting a lot because I'm trying to fit into the culture and I don't want to klopper. So it's like, it's a bit that compass, right? It's like swinging in roundabouts to finding the target. Um, and I saw it on another model as well regarding, assertiveness. You might call speaking on target also assertiveness. And the strength of a pussyfooter is empathy and care, right? But what's missing with a pussyfooter is clarity and direction. Where a klopper is really strong on direction and clarity, but a klopper is missing the care and the empathy. And so, whatever side you're on, you just need to bring the strength of the other. So if you want to become, move from a klopper to a target, you need to bring a bit more care in. So hey, I'm really hearing what you're saying, and I would also like to hear other people what they have to say. Yeah. Um, or, if the pussyfooter, like bringing more clarity in, being really brave and speaking really, really clearly, and naming what's happening. Yeah. That you have that strength of care that you're bringing. Yep. And in the moment feedback, I think is really powerful. And I miss that moment often as well in groups. And I think Stephen said that, right, it doesn't get better when you miss it. And sometimes you might notice after a session, oh, could have intervened there, then and then to make a real difference, And it takes a lot of courage to intervene when you know something isn't quite right, or conflict is happening, or disagreements, or even bullying, or whatever. It's like how can you intervene in a moment? That's like where I shared earlier the flapping the lips practice that I'm doing. Like I want to say something, and I just need to build up the courage to find the right words. Like, hey, hang on, that's not okay. Let's figure out what needs to happen here. So it's a practice that comes with practice, and that's why our courses are so much linked into practicing intervening and practicing to facilitate. That's I think that's on this. Just looking how we're doing on time. We're gonna have some time for questions and a bit of a chit chat afterwards. So if you have any questions, please put them into the chat, or you can also just interrupt us. But there will be also a bit of time at the end. So I want to talk about facilitating the group. So we talked about facilitating self, facilitating individuals, but then the group, you also as a facilitator is always holding the group as a separate identity, right? The group is made out of its individual parts, but it's actually something different. And when a group creates a real powerful purpose and culture, they're becoming an entity in themselves, and ultimately when I get to synergy in a group. And so your attention is always, does that bring the group forward towards the purpose, right? You're standing always in the purpose. So some of the common challenges that might can get answered in this next model is knowing when and how to step in, right? Yeah? Knowing when and how to step in to bring a group forward. Judging the right moment to interrupt, distinguishing essential discussions from tangents, and doing it without feeling intrusive and cutting people off mid-flow. This is often the feeling, like when do you intervene and what are you standing in? Balancing structure with flexibility, like you have your agenda, but then also what's happening in the room. Like you also want people to achieve their purpose and not just the agenda. The challenge of reading the room and the right time, and of course the time pressure coming with it. So the next model is, why do we intervene as facilitators, right? So interventions, what is an intervention? I often say an intervention is everything you do and don't do as a facilitator. So even choosing to be silent and to turn up your listening, or to give a bit more space around the subject, is an intervention. Yeah. And other people, of course, intervene all the time as well. But the key thing on this model is that your mandate to intervene as a facilitator is given to you by the group by the purpose that you all agreed on while you are there together, right? It's not about you and your agenda, it's about the purpose and the outcomes that you guys agreed that you wanted to achieve. Now, it's often like I find it, in particular in the corporate sector, really hard to define a purpose. People are just linked to their agenda and their outcomes, but what's the actual intention we're right here for, right? But why are we here for? Are we wanting also to connect in this day to day, or we just want to tick off boxes on the agenda? So having a practice of looking why are we here together and finding the purpose, it comes back to our facilitation model at the beginning. Without the purpose, you will find it hard to intervene, right? You need to have an intention. So, and there's all these different options here in the Art of Facilitation book. There are even more, and there's some really, really powerful questions in there that you can use to intervene for any of those. But you will see here, guarding the culture, right? If someone actually constantly interrupts, the culture was maybe like everyone can participate, you might want to intervene. Say, okay, we haven't actually heard from everyone, and that wasn't our culture. We have heard a lot from this one person. Enable participation. You, as the facilitator, you are really good at cooperative processes and collaborative processes. This is your skill, right? You're not necessarily bringing a lot of content. You're staying most likely out of content, but you enable participation. That's your job. That's why you intervene, and that's again, okay, we have heard from all of you, but I haven't heard anything from you for a while. Can you please share what's going on? Or would you be willing to share something? Bring people in. Enabling participation can also be people might be shy to talk, so maybe split them into small groups or pairs to have a conversation, right? To get the conversation going. It could be another way of enabling participation. You might want to shift levels. So this is really small on here, but the different levels are, your physical level. You might need to get people up, standing, or sitting down, intuitive level, thinking level, spiritual level, emotional level, energy level, and synergistic level. So what's the level the group is on? Do they need an energizer, or do they need to calm down because they're super hectic in their heads? Do you need to calm them down? What's the energy? So you do that. Balancing task and process, like the agenda and the process of getting the people to the purpose, can be hard. Managing external factors and time. How do you negotiate more time on a certain aspect of the agenda, right? Like how do you get the group involved to help you handling time? I often find it helpful to have times on the actual agenda visible in the room to help people, to help you guys managing time as well. But then people can see when the next item was meant to happen, and you can so negotiate with them. And creating choice. How can you create choice as a facilitator? An example, for creating choice is, okay, I see this topic is really important right now, and there's a lot of energy people discussing this topic, and we also have a couple more things on the agenda. How would you like to proceed? You either can give them an option and say, okay, we can either spend another 10 minutes on this and missing that one, or we park this and set another time aside to focus on this really important thing, but then go back onto the agenda. Yes, you can negotiate, you can offer choices. That's what you as a facilitator can do. So these are just some examples on how you might intervene, when to intervene. And like I said, there's a few more things in the book as well. I do have lots of time here to have some questions and conversations. I just speeded through this. I like what questions do you have? Or, Stephen, is there anything to add from you as well?
Oh, I think you've covered it all there.
Hmm.
Yeah, particularly that piece about what you don't do is also an intervention, and that can be quite powerful at times. And sometimes holding the silence or what's wanting to emerge to have the space to come out is just as powerful an intervention as asking a question or finding that gem in the room.
So we have a bit of time here, about 10 minutes even, if you want it, but we don't have to take it. But Is there anyone here who maybe has a scenario or a challenge they would love
Mm.
to workshop with us on how you might intervene into a certain challenge scenario in your group? We could have time for that now.
I have a question. So when I facilitate in this particular group where I'm here in the community, there are some people, as you mentioned before, who are very, dominant and always want to be right. Even if the rest of the room say no, they still think they're right. So in order to prevent them from being dominant, we made it that everybody has just 2 minutes. So, but in a way, it doesn't happen in every meeting that we just see how we go and then we intervene. But we kind of before already try to kind of not go there. Let's put it like that. And I wonder if that's actually a smart thing to do, or if you work with that, or if you always have it open and then intervene when people don't participate, or you notice somebody is very dominant.
Yeah. I certainly think that if you set those expectations up early in your culture and reminding people at the beginning, this is how we're going to work together today, that's a great way to set up a time for people. And yeah, timing's really important to both stick to, but to also give people space and not cut them right off at 2 minutes. But if they're finishing off that sentence at 2:05 or 2:10, to honor the offering that they have. And yeah, we always like to start with declaring, I'm the facilitator. This is the purpose for our session today, and this is the culture we have, or what's the culture we need today for this particular session and this meeting, and deciding that as a group up front. I have worked with groups where we've talked to the dominant people um, outside of the room first, particularly when they were a senior manager and a senior leader, and nobody would speak until they spoke first, and then they would agree with him. And that wasn't really getting into the collective intelligence in the group. So he purposely waited till every single person in the group spoke, and then he spoke at the end. And that seemed to change the dynamic quite a lot. And people were a little bit confused at the start because they'd gotten so used to this pattern. So sometimes, something like that in advance, if you know there's a common pattern, it's pretty tricky when those people are senior professors at a university and they like to dominate. They have no reason to believe that anyone else is more clever than they are. So there's always egos at play, which in hierarchical organizations are very difficult to challenge. I guess too, within a community setting, you probably have some community values that you can draw on, and some of those sort of more general things that might help. Anything to add, Simone? How would you tackle that?
Yeah, I think the having a really honest culture conversation, look, how do we want to work together? And what's working here and what's not, having actually real and around the purpose, like what's our purpose as as a community, and how do we want to work together? What's important for all of us? And then maybe get some group works going, like even like pairs, so everyone's like a brainstorming exercise to get everyone's wisdom in, and then really having it clear there. Okay, we want to all be heard, or we all want to have equal airtime, or whatever people come in for, what they really want, and then that culture will be. And even in that conversation, I know when you have that conversation about how we're working together, that can be a great storming opportunity where people really can say what they really want, and they can sort of nut out a little bit what's working for them and not. Particularly for a community that's been a long time around, it might actually turn into a little bit of clearing of conflict at the same time, which could be really great, and some niggles and concerns around how has it been and how do we actually want to work forward, having a culture review. I think that I would probably do that at some point, and then if you have a good framework to stand in, and to intervene from, if everyone agrees on that, And then I think what you said, like having actually 2 minutes each, having structures in place to really allow equal participation is a great thing. Yeah, I think that's the only things to add. I feel, yeah. I do notice we do go until an hour and a half, but before we can do a bit more discussions, I want to share, do a little pitch on our next course for anyone here who has to leave earlier. So we got the next Art of Facilitation coming up. There's an online one that starts on the 18th of August, together with European and Asian time zones. And we got a really nice international group already on it, which is really fantastic. And we have a face-to-face one in Auckland happening on the 29th of August to the 2nd of September. And I'm going to put those links in here as well if you do want to even just have a chat about some of your community or any other issues we do. Very happy to have a free chat with either of us. You can book a call with us to have a chat, how else we might be able to help with some mentoring or coaching, or even just have a chat for free with us. It's totally fine. And if you do come to our course or any one of your colleagues, you get a 20% discount for the webinar. So if you register with us, just put webinar in and we can give you still an extra 20% or 20% extra discount for being our fans.